We're
I
all
see the
muted.
contact. Yeah, I
Hey,
see the contact. Yeah, systemic and energy coach training.
good, it works. Yes, okay, so that's great. Okay, so welcome. Systemic and energy coach trainings is for the complete training, and most of you guys are in for the complete training. So I welcome you very much to that. What is systemic and energy coach training? Well, obviously you will see over the course of the training what it is, but it is a broad word, and that's good because there's so many ways to facilitate family constellations as there are people who are doing it, right? So the good thing is it's not one way to do it, and the great thing is you can integrate it in any kind of therapeutic things you already do, and even in things not therapeutic things, right? As I said, you use it in schools in Germany, you use it in prisons, you use it in companies. So I had clients in Germany that were CEOs of companies who came and wanted a family constellation, right? So it is like endless open what you can do with family constellation, but it always has to do with energy, and we are working with systems. So this is why it is systemic and energy coaching. We are in this module talking about the orders of love. Now, the orders of love is not an original word created by Bert Hellinger, because he was writing only in German language, and I only read German books from him. So I have translated it as the orders of love, because this is the literal translation from his from his German book, which looks like this. I show you that. It looks like this, and it was written in 1994. So 25 years ago, so it's reflecting his work from 30 years ago. And it's still absolutely mind-blowing, accurate what he's seeing. It is also, I think, Mariella, you have this book in English, the translation, The Lost Hidden Symmetries. I think that is actually the English book translation of it.
I got this book in Portuguese as well.
Ah, Dan, yeah, great. So you have it in Portuguese. Yeah. Do you have the book, Mariella? Yeah, get it. So I urge you to, during the time of, I will come up with a reading list for you. I urge you to read books from Orders do Amor. That's a very literal translation from the Orders of Love.
Yeah, it's exactly Orders do Amor, yeah, the Orders of Love.
Yeah, exactly. It's called, here's Love, Hidden Symmetries. Yes, I think that's the order of love in this book, in the translator chose another words, I think. I'm pretty sure that's the same. So this is the groundbreaking, and the first book, hang on, that's not the first book. There was another one which I extremely recommend, but I don't know the English translated title, but I will sort that all out for your reading list. But one of the first books that he wrote, and it is all in the form of constellations, actually. So it's only transcript of his constellations. So it's not a training book at all. It is interesting to read, but you read all the constellations and who was moving where and looking at whom, and like this. So not what you would expect of a book that is actually teaching you content. But everything is in there that you need to know about the orders of love. Why do we need to know about the orders of love, and what is it anyhow? Well, if you think of a system, then you think of like it's a field that is organized, that is forming a system. And when we are talking about the work we are doing, then we are talking about the orders that is creating this system. So when we're talking about a family system, then we are talking about the orders that are actually creating the system, because without orders, it would be chaos, right? So the field itself is just providing the space for a system to be organized, if you will. So families are creating a system, but we have systems everywhere. We have a system with religion, we have a system with countries, we have a system for races, we have everywhere, or even if you're like in a football team or something, every group is creating, when it's organized, a system. Yes, Kate. You have to unmute yourself when you ask something.
So that sounds like the system can change. It will be flexible over time. Do you think that, or do you think it's got a natural fixed system?
It's very fixed. It's very stable. The members change, not the system. Yeah. So before we go further into the content of the Orders of Love, it just reminds me, thank you, Kate, for your question. It just reminds me to do a little bit of housekeeping before. So when you, I asked you to have a, let me just find something here, to have a notebook there, right? So the way I can see the training is that I am providing you with the information, obviously, and also with some structure, which you see in the slideshow. And I will also use the whiteboard to do drawings and things like that. And I will also use the figurines if we want to demonstrate something. But from all what I have learned over my lifetime, all the courses and studies I did, is that it's really important that you find your own words for things, to memorize them, you know? It's very hard to memorize my words, you know, and it's not your work anyhow. So therefore, I would like you to create a family constellation training notebook that is completely for this purpose. And you write everything in there that you hear, that you find it's notable for you in your own word, and you can take screenshots from what I share here on screen, and can print it out, put it in your notebook, or write it up. So I would like you to have your own energy in your own notebook. That is really important, that you're learning the things from that is specifically individually meant for you, and that you have your own artistic creational energy in there. Therefore, it is yours, and you will remember it without needing to learn it, and it will be kind of memorized when you need it, because it's part of you. Did that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So also, it would be, your internet connection is unstable, it said. Are you hearing me well? Seeing me well? Okay, I don't know. I just got a message. That's really bizarre. Also, I would like you to make some notes of your questions, and then we have a Q&A before the break or after the break, we see, and then I will answer all these questions. Yeah. So I'm in the flow, so to speak. Right? Okay. Is there anything else I can think of that I would like to point out? Let me just, I have some notes here. Yeah, so yes, I wanted to tell you also what to expect from the training module 1, 2, and 3 when it's coming up. So the training module 1 is all about the Orders of Love, due to Albert Hellinger. It's the philosophy and the theory behind the work. So we will focus, and it's a lot to take in 9 hours. No, actually in 3 hours, because we are hang on. Yeah, it's actually, no, it's in 9 hours, because we're talking the time but it's a lot to take in, and it's very dense into information, which is where we start. But it becomes a lot more practical over the course of the time. So module 2, for example, is completely about the practical aspects of the work. So every question you have in module 1, when we're talking about a specific order and a specific relationship, how to apply it in a family constellation, bear with me, we will talk about that in module 2. Right? So we don't want to jump back and forth and being confused with what we're talking about and what is the teaching content, okay? So module 2 is about the practical aspect. Module 1 is where we're here this weekend, is about the theory behind it. And then module 3 is actually how to apply all of this in the real life. either in your own life or in a constellation, facilitating, or in help for yourself or others or families also. So that's the structure of this training. And then, of course, we have module 4 and 5, which has a different content. It's not originated by Bert Hellinger, but it has been proven in my work as absolutely amazing addition to the work, and makes it really complete, I think, and round. And okay, so that was the one I wanted to say. And I really want you also to not to listen to the details too academic, you know, don't be too academic. Just feel the information more than you actually understand them, because the orders of love, they are quite challenging for the mind, yeah? Because Bert Hellinger is really putting us into kind of dilemmas, you know, how we look at parents, for example, and other relationships. And the mind will come up with immediately with a reaction of either dismissal or confusion or maybe approval even, but with something that takes you away from the content, yeah? So don't be too mind focused in this course, especially not in module 1, right? Just be open and feel it and feel it. Feel if it's right, if it feels right for you. Does it make sense? Yeah? Okay, cool. And then having seen and talked about the books of Bert Hellinger, this is of course crucial for if you do the complete training. And as I said before, I will come up with a list of books. Now here I am a little bit in a dilemma because all the books are in German. Obviously you're not speaking German. There are translations that I don't know of, and I cannot tell you how good they are. But I think it's obviously good if you read it in your mother tongue and or in English if in your second language. And really every book is good that Bert Hellinger was writing, even if it's translated. I'm absolutely sure about that. However, this is to be separated from secondary literature. So be aware that I'm not recommending you to read any secondary literature, right? I recommend to read only the books that Bert Hellinger wrote. There are hundreds of secondary literatures, obviously, and I can't say anything about them, yeah? And this is why I cannot recommend to read them, and it's maybe even confusing, you know, because they are coming in from another, I'm coming in from another angle, and they're coming in from another angle, and then, you know, it's probably a bit confusing. So, and I'm not going to discuss it anyhow here. So if you have a question to any secondary literature, I wouldn't be able to discuss that because I don't know it, maybe, yeah, and where this person, this author comes from. So I urge you to read Bert Hellinger literature. That would be the best. And as I said, there's 50 books in German, over 50. And so many things he has also audio taped that you can listen to, but that would be in German, obviously, that wouldn't be in English. So I'm sure there, and I know there's a lot of translation in English and Spanish because family constellation work is big in South America, very, very big, almost as big as in Germany, for some reason. I don't actually know why. Yeah, and that would be part of the complete training. Okay. So now that's what I wanted to say. So now we are coming to the orders of love. When we talk about the orders of love, there are these 4 aspects that we need to look close at. The one aspect is the belonging. The belonging tells us who belongs to a family system. This is absolutely crucial to understand before you start. Because if you don't understand who is belonging to family system, you cannot work with it, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is destiny. And that might be a surprise, but destiny is a part of the orders of love. That's one challenging, mind-challenging aspect of Bert Hellinger's work. The third one is even more challenging, it's conscience. Bert Hellinger has put a lot of effort and a lot of books and readings into conscience, which you can hardly find anywhere else that anybody puts any effort in it to look at it. He has looked deep into it. and has the most amazing insights out of his work with conscience, and we will look into that today. And then the fourth one is guilt. Guilt is something that is actually guiding us on a very subconscious level all the time, and makes kind of puts the love out of order, to put it that way. And to understand where guilt comes from, and when we look at it in our own lives specifically, but then in others as well, and how to turn that back into love, that is one very powerful healing aspect of the work. So as I said, feel free to do screenshots or take your phone and take a photo from the screen, because I'm sharing these slides for you just for structure, so you know where you are at in the course, right? And the content I will talk about, and then you can take notes and whatever rings a bell that resonates with you. Good. So we are starting with belonging. So who belongs to a family system? And we are talking about a family system here, right? Because we are talking about family constellation. Family members. Family members in Bert Hellinger's world are blood-related family members. They share the same genetics, although he couldn't care less about the genes, right? But what is much more important is the epigenetics are much more powerful, as we now know, and they actually have a big say in what we see in family constellations. So when we talk about family members, we need to know which family members belong to the system and which doesn't, because not every family member belongs to the system. Therefore, we will now make a drawing together and see what, and I will make a visual for you, so you can also screenshot that, obviously. So we are starting here, which I call me. So that is you, right? Because you are here. You are the one who's interested. You are the one who comes to constellation. You are feeling drawn. It's all about you, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's not egoic, you know. We feel this guilt. Oh, it's not about me. No, no, no. It's not about. It is about you, and that's beautiful. And own it, right? Own it. It's about you. You are here, and that is you. And now we are looking at your family system and who belongs to it. So we have two lines. We have the vertical line and the horizontal line. I'm going through the vertical line first. So you are coming from a mother and a father, obviously. And your parents, we call that your parents, are having their parents. So they have parents. This would be the mother, and this would be the father. And the same over here, mother and father. So this is 1, 2, 3 generations, right? Family constellations are going far more back than 3 generations. It goes way back, goes back to 7 generations. And I can tell you a little story about that when I have finished my drawing. So after these, there are 4 more generations, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we call these the ancestors, right? And you can just picture how they kind of spread in this tree, right? It's just like a big tree. But most of the time in family constellations, you will never constellate with all of them. That's not going to happen. So there will be probably 1 or 2 ancestors that actually have a powerful impact on the constellation. And then we put it another color, maybe yellow. Then obviously here on top, that's the source. You can also call it God or divine, divinity, or heaven, or however you want to call it. But just to tell you, the source is part of the family system. And we see it in constellations. And it does play a big role. So never forget the source is part. So this is the bloodline, which is red. Now we come to the horizontal line. I make another color here. So the horizontal line is starting it where you are, going that way. That would be your siblings. And then on the other hand, also your partners. Now this is completely different because your siblings are blood related, while your partners are not blood related, right? So just bear that in mind, but they are both part of the family system. Siblings are your brother, your sister, your half brother, your half sister, right? They are also the unborn siblings that are aborted or miscarried children. They are also the siblings. Siblings are also the children that has died after they've been born, regardless of their age. If it's 1 day or 10 years after their birth, they are still the siblings. And they play a strong role in the orders of loss in the family system, especially when they have passed away. So that is the sibling part. The partner part, now the partners, they are bound to the family system by destiny. And I will talk about destiny and in family constellation in great deal, probably after our break. We see how it goes. It's a very powerful way to go into a foreign family system. And now these horizontal lines, they are also in the second generation of relevance. So in the generation of your parents, their siblings are belonging to the system. So that would be your uncles, your aunties, the uncles and aunts that haven't been born or that have been passed away after birth. They are belonging, same thing. And on the other hand, also the former partners of your parents. So I say former partners. Former partners are sometimes entangled in the family system with family members because they are giving way or making space for your father or mother, right? Just think of it. If your mother would have, before the mother was dating your father, dated somebody else, and she would have stayed with this somebody else, you wouldn't be born. It's just a little kind of, thing to think about. So this former partner has made space for you to be born and for your father to come in. So this is a destiny. So this is why they belong to this family system, although you would probably never think of it, right? Often in a family constellation, when I ask the client I'm working with do you have former partner? They think, oh, they have to think about it, It's not. And then if I ask, did your mother had a former partner? Often you don't know this even, right? And it's actually not important to know it because we see it anyhow in a family constellation. But this can cause an imbalance because they are part of the family system. And if something is not in order with them, if they are not in the right order, then we have a disturbance in the family system. So in the third generation, also, sometimes we have a horizontal line. But actually, that is not very often. So I wouldn't expect it to see it in a family constellation, but it can happen. So it might happen, so you cannot exclude it. but you wouldn't focus on it in a family constellation. For your ancestors, there's no horizontal line. There's nobody there, no former partner or no sibling that would ever play a role in the family constellation. Right? So good so far? Can I have your thumbs up? Good. Very good. Okay. Now I have another color, which is green, because now we are coming to the members of a family system that are also part of the family system, but not by blood relation and not by chosen partnership. And these are two groups. One is the group of the victim and perpetrator, and or perpetrator. Like, this is one group. Often, actually, they are also blood related. So when you look in the family system, there's often a victim or a perpetrator from the same family system. But that's not what I'm talking here about. This victim or perpetrator would be from outside the family system, not blood related. As a matter of example, like in the generation of your grandfathers, there was a murder. Somebody murdered your father or the grandfather or a sibling of the grandfather or something like that. That would be the dynamic, right? Or in the ancestors, often we have that in scenarios from the war. So all the family constellations in Germany, obviously most of them, like Sophie Helding, are very familiar with them. I had them too. You are ending up all the time on a battlefield, right? Because you have these two world wars that are all happened on German grounds, and that's coming up. Like every family has an entanglement either as a victim or a perpetrator, and it always came up there. And I'm sure the same is in South America and Argentina and everywhere there, right? Just in New Zealand we are blessed. We don't see that. I never had anything like this in New Zealand. Yes, you have to unmute yourself, Daniel.
Yes, it's funny. We didn't have many wars here, but we have all these people who went to the war, you know, in the Anzac war and everything. And the funny thing, especially here in Croatia, we have many autistic kids, you know, and I somehow think sometimes that they are reminiscents of the war, of the descendants of the war somehow. Really interesting because we didn't have wars right here in this land. Well, we have Maori, but anyway, this English descendant, mostly English descendant, related from this generation, how they were born autistic somehow, and yeah, and it's quite related to wars.
Yeah. We could actually look at this, Danielle, to make a note. We can look at autism in one of our exercises. Yeah, that's a good thing. Good. So would be interested to see where this is coming from, right? Okay, thank you. So that is one aspect. So the victim or perpetrator comes in on all levels, right? So it can happen in all 7 generations. And it often happens in the upper one, right? You often see that. And then we have the other dynamic, the other group that belongs to family system without being related by blood. And I have to use a very clumsy English translation for that, because obviously it's a German term. And it's Vor-Nachteilsgeber in German, and I translated it as advantage and disadvantage giver or receiver, right? And I will explain to you what this actually means. So we put that here, advantage, disadvantage giver or receiver. And also they can come in on every level of the family system and on all 7 generations. Now, what does that mean? Just briefly saying, if one of the family members had an advantage on the cost of somebody else, And we're talking about big advantages here, right? So we're talking about like an inheritance that makes like the family rich, or that provides them a living, like a business, or that provides them land, for example, something like that. Then the advantage giver is entangled with the family system. So it's part of the family system. And it will come up if there's an imbalance in the order of love, it will come up. Same with the disadvantage giver. So when somebody from the family had a disadvantage because somebody else outside of the family took something away, and we're mostly talking about material things when we're talking about advantage and disadvantage. Yeah, it's often related to money, land, a house, a business, something like that. So these persons are, through action, part of the family system. So just to recap, you be part of the family system by blood, this is red. You're part of the family system by destiny, which is pink in this case. You're part of the family system of somebody else by action, which is victim perpetrator, or advantage disadvantage giver, which is green. So that's just the way to remember it. Everybody else is not part of the family system. Now, just quickly checking in if you're all still awake. Who would be somebody else you can think of who is not part of the family system? Please unmute yourself and speak up.
Step siblings.
Yes.
Someone
Daniel.
that you have a one-night stand?
Well, I have to tell a story about that, but yes, we take it for, yeah.
Yeah, otherwise,
yeah.
very entangled.
Yeah. Yeah. So I take that because there's a funny story. So in one of the a workshop with Bert and Sophie Hellinger, so I think it was Sophie actually, the wife of Bert Hellinger. She was facilitating constellation for somebody who had a problem with the relationship. So she asked this, I think it was a woman, a young woman, or youngish woman, not really young, to put all the people she had sex with and choose a representative. Like everybody, including one-night stands. And you just think about it. Let's say you're mid-20s or maybe, end 20s. Let's just be honest, yeah? Let's think about how many people you had sex with. Without being a weird person, just normal. What would you say? Like just throw a number. 10, 20, huh? 100? How many?
I counted 15.
15, okay. So do you think it's moderate?
Very
For
moderate.
my age, very
moderate, hey?
I won't say. I'll rather the ladies talk first here.
Yeah. So just think about it. Now find so many representatives for them, right? And then she put them all up there. And then she said, look at all these partners that she considered to be part of the family system, yeah. And now and now look at your new partner. This is overwhelming for him. And I said, I was thinking to myself, yeah, of course it's overwhelming, but it's normal. This is why you don't do that, So the family constellation showed, so she wanted to demonstrate something. She wanted to demonstrate that everybody you have sex with belongs to the family system. But in fact, the family constellation showed it wasn't the case. Right? This is what I want to tell you. So, although I know that she's still considering everybody you had sex with be part of the family constellation, family system, I have not seen Bert doing that. And I have never seen that for myself. Right? So I wouldn't consider somebody with a one-night stand to be part of it. However, if you get pregnant from it, that's a different story. Yeah. So when a child is born, and we were talking about that, we were talking about partner relationships and intimate relationships, romantic relationship. that changes the whole thing, right? But as long as it's a one-night stand and you probably don't even know the name, it doesn't have a big impact. So the entanglement is not there. So it would be very unlikely that you have a one-night stand when you were 19 and he got entangled with a victim of your grandfather in the war. You know what I mean? That's super unrealistic and unlikely. I have never seen it. So I would call the plug there. I would not count the one-night stand to the family system. And I would stick with partners that have committed to the system. They
Or
are...
maybe a drama?
Hmm?
Or a drama, like a rape or
that's victim perpetrator. Yes. So that's a very good point, Kate. So just to point that out, rape is always an entanglement with the family system because it's a victim perpetrator dynamic.
Okay.
Always. You know, so victim perpetrator is not only murder, it's also rape, or it's a severe, you know, if somebody is beaten somebody half death and he's now in the wheelchair or something, you know, that is all victim perpetrator. And this forced sex on somebody else is also a relationship that is bound in destiny often. So we will look at that. So it can come from either the perpetrator victim dynamic or from the destiny.
Can you elaborate on step parents, step siblings? Kate brought that up before.
Yeah. Okay. So step siblings are coming from another family system. They have their own father, their own mother, their own siblings. Yeah. So they are not, although they live in your household, they are neither blood related, nor do they come through action or through destiny into your family system. So when you look in a family system, they will not play any role. That is the same with adoption.
Ah, why is that not destiny?
Sorry?
Why is that not destiny?
Well, it just, so let's step back. Half sisters are part of the system. If you have a blood relation, so let's make the definition. What is a half sister and what's a step sister, right? Mm-hmm. So a half sister has either the same father or the same mother. Part of the family system. A step sister, as I understand, Kate, has a father and mother from somebody else, and they meet, and then one is marrying or partnering with one of your mother or father. And so they live in your household. They have their own family system.
Yeah, but it's interesting because because the new family is more important than the old family, even though the blood. So it's quite an interesting dynamic. I remember that was my first constellation. It was
exactly. It's exactly the same dynamic as when with adoption. So we will talk about that in more depth. It is normally not a destiny relationship, but it can happen. But then they are entangled not because they are step siblings. They are entangled because they are either victim perpetrators or they are advantage disadvantage giver.
Okay, yeah. So in my family, we all knew each other, and I would say we were entangled before they even got married. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you don't put them in your diagram here at all?
Which one?
The step siblings.
No.
You wouldn't put them in, right?
Not if they're just the half siblings, not the step siblings.
Right. So
are we clear on that?
Step sibling would be there if they were a victim perpetrator or a advantage disadvantage, which is.
But they would show up. They would show up. They would show up here, right?
Yeah.
They would not show up here in the blue line.
Right.
In the blue line.
Green.
Yeah.
Okay.
Siblings, half siblings, dead siblings, unborn siblings are here.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's good and clear.
Awesome. All right. So let's. Did you do a screenshot of this or take a photo of it? Oh, you have already your artwork there, Danya. Very good. Okay. All right, then we move on. Go back to our, what is the time? So when did we start? So we have from 6 to 9. So I was thinking after 1.5 hours, we make a break of 10 or 15 minutes. So we can stretch our legs, get a sip of what, eat something, whatever. That would be actually 7:30, right? So round about in 20 minutes, right? Okay, okay. All right, so hang on, I go to back. Belonging. So we have talked about the family members, and if you still have a question and something hasn't quite set in, just make a note and we talk about that, yeah? Okay. Now the next, the dynamic we want to talk about is the victim perpetrator, just in a little bit more depth. How they come into the family system and how they belong to the family system. So a victim or a perpetrator, they are, and you see that in family constellations in real time all the time, they actually belong together, right? And what is dividing them is the sensation of conscience and guilt. So it's morality, actually, that makes us looking at it in a different angle. But in a family constellation, that is one groundbreaking work of Bert Hellinger, it has become to light that the victim and the perpetrator do belong together by destiny, if you will, right? So we have to swallow that really, you know, on a moral level, right? So we are not talking about how we actually deal with it in the family constellation, but I want to point out when these dynamics mostly comes up in family constellations. So the war scenario is one, very common in Germany, right? So in a war scenario, you see that like it is like one of the grandfather or something of the client. He is looking at the death and he really wants to follow either his dead comrades, very common, because he feels guilt that he's alive and they are dead. Or he wants to lay down by the victims because he feels he belongs to the victims. But morality, conscience of the family doesn't allow us to see that. And everything that doesn't allow us to see something in the right order of love is causing suffering for a descendant. So that's the rule. So every time the order of love is obscured, somebody is suffering. And when you put the right order back, then this somebody is relieved. That is actually family constellation work in a brief sentence. Right. And this is why it's absolutely crucial to understand the orders of love and follow it. Yeah. So victim perpetrators, obviously rape is another one. We are talking about like really mainly actions that cause death. So now we're talking a little bit about the family soul and how the family soul is storing information, or as Rupert Sheldrake named it, the morphogenetic field is storing information. Now, if you think about it, if you think about the family soul and it wants to evolve like all souls want, it takes everything that is creative and nourishing, you know, to become bigger and stronger and happier and, you know, just more shiny, more uplifted, higher in energy. So this is not a problem. And these information are not stored in form of information. They are stored in form of energy. They are stored in form of life energy. That's actually what is nourishing. We can call it love, right? I like to call it love in a very broad sense. Everything that is obscuring the orders of love makes love to interrupt in its flow, because love is always, energy is always flowing. It's not stagnant. So is love, it's flowing. So everything that is not in the order of love is stuck. It kind of literally, if you look at love as a stream that runs from the source or from the spring to the ocean, then that's like a big obstacle in there, like a big rock or something like that, or a wall. And the water, you know, builds up behind, and in front it cannot flow. That's when the love cannot flow. And this is because in the orders of love, there is something not abide. Something is not in order. And why we do that, we talk about that when we talk about the conscience and the guilt. So the work is to find this rock and to lift it by putting it where it belongs, at the shore, for example, in this simple picture, yeah, and not in the middle of the stream. That's all. That's all we do, and that's what helps. It's amazing. So, victim-perpetrator energies are when somebody comes into family system who is not bound by blood, in a part of the family system, and kind of throws the rock into the river of love, which is a traumatic experience for one of the family members. That's the point here. So when it's a traumatic experience and it's not love, well, it's obscured love, obviously. It interrupts the flow of love. That is when the family soul is not nourished by it, but stores it as an information, because it wants to reveal the information at one stage, to give this family the chance to solve it, remove the rock, let the love flow, and nourish the family soul again, so it can advance in the end. That's what the family soul really wants. So all these information that are traumatic are stored as information to be revealed to to a descendant. So he or she will look at it, find its way to some healing modalities, while family constellation being one of the strong mans in there, and finds a solution. So we have mainly to deal with death. A victim perpetrator energy I have seen a lot in the family constellations in Germany are what they call in German Engelmacher, which is translated probably I don't know, angel creator or something. These are the persons that do abortions, right? So although it might be allowed, you know, legally, it is still a problem for the orders of love in abortion. And the people who are supporting that are actually looked at perpetrators, right? So you have to bear that in mind. It is definitely happening in the generations like 3, 4, 5, 5th generation a lot, where it was kind of life-threatening and illegal to do abortions. But it is still the same dynamic somehow existing here in this generation, where it is legal and all medically looked after. Another victim perpetrator would be a homicide, really. A severe, like if somebody poisons somebody else and they don't die, but they have a life-threatening disease, you know, they're ending up in a wheelchair or having a stroke or a heart attack or whatnot. That's also victim perpetrator. Okay, question to you again. What would be, after all you heard now, not a victim perpetrator situation? What do we think?
What about an accident?
Accidents, when they are deadly, yes, correct, it's not victim perpetrator, but they would be also part of the family constellation by destiny.
So the event itself.
The event itself is traumatic as well. Yeah.
So let's say, for example, an earthquake or, you know, a natural disaster.
Okay, let's think about natural disasters. So natural disasters are not traumatic when they are kind of flowing with the love, right? So if there's nobody else involved, that is making it worse. For example, there's an earthquake, somebody is under the rocks, yeah, and somebody else walks by and hears him and doesn't do anything. Now we have a victim-perpetrator situation. But the earthquake itself and that the person is under the rocks is not causing anybody else to be entangled with the family system, right? Of course, there's agony and there is fear and all of this. But that would not make a descendant, most likely, you know, to be entangled with this. This is also what we look in module 4 with. It's one of the things where I think family constellation is not quite dealing with it, where we work with these traumas that are not causing entanglements. You know? For example, if somebody's bullied, like, you know, there can be really bad bullying going on and somebody could be really suffering of that, but the bullier would not be part of the family system. That just comes to my mind. Daniel.
It just came to my mind now. I don't know why, but people who go to parties and pick up fights, you know, like that sort of people with that energy, you know, who always want to find a reason to fight, you know.
Yeah.
Might be some sort of resonance with a perpetrator, right? Or
yeah. So in the work where we were looking in module 2 and 3, if it's a he who is looking for fights, he will follow a certain dynamic. But he is not entangled in another family system by fighting with somebody else from another family system, unless he's not dying. You know? Yeah.
Right, unless there's a loss or a gain.
Yeah. Yeah. It must have a really big impact on the family itself. Yeah. Changing, you know, the life of the family. Okay, then the next point would be, we were just here, we were looking at the victim-perpetrator situation, and now we are looking at the advantage and disadvantage giver and receiver, which I say is a really clumsy translation, I'm sorry for that, but I don't know an original English translation for that. But what it actually is exactly what it says. What it is, somebody has an advantage at the cost of somebody else's disadvantage. And we are talking about something that is supporting a life of the family, yeah? And you see that, and I had that in family constellations. I don't know the whole constellation, what it was, but it had to do with the land somebody had actually inherited from the parents, and the parents from the grandparents, and the grandparents actually have been kind of gotten the land from somebody, off somebody with some really sleazy things, right? Really bad things. And now in this constellation, this person, this client, had some suffering, and we looked at it and we found out it was because the grandparents' generation's disadvantaged receiver was entangled with her. Right. That's a very common way to see disadvantage-advantage giver relationship. Also, so it's land, it's a business. We had that again in Germany a lot during this Nazi Germany, when the Jewish people have been taken their businesses away and given to, you know, German people. obviously that's a disadvantage relationship. So the person, the owner of the Jewish business, for example, would be entangled with the family who took like the advantage out of his suffering. So we have land business. Of course, an inheritance is often part of that dynamic, you know. So
yeah,
if somebody,
where the step siblings come in, because they affect inheritance and land and
yeah,
money.
for example, if somebody inherited somebody who's not in the line, you know, who shouldn't be inherit. So if the father decided to give everything to a maîtresse or I don't know, you know, and leaves the children out and his wife or whatnot, you know, then it is the maîtresse becomes part of the family system, and the descendant might very well be entangled with her, often in the third generation.
It came to me also, my people who always are in laws fights against a certain business that they work with, claiming money or claiming extra things that the employers did bad things to them. They're always there wanting that to take advantage from that situation. Some people
So
job to job trying
yeah.
to find, you know.
So
Very
why
common.
somebody, so this doesn't mean that this person, so when you see a dynamic, that doesn't mean that that is the cause. Yeah. So we are talking about the dynamic and later on. At the moment we're talking about the orders of love and who's belonging to them, because it is not so simple. So
I
it's
know.
not so yes.
It came to my mind because in South America it's very common, you know, probably because we have lots of slaves and, you know, the Africans that came to the country were slaves, but there's a lot of this culture of take advantage from the business.
Yeah.
Wanting more, but probably it's from there now. I just got in my mind.
So what I want you to memorize now, it's really important, is that you know that somebody who has taken or receiving an advantage or disadvantage somewhere in the 7 generations of the family system is part of your family system. That's all. How this actually situation plays out in a constellation later on, when a descendant actually looks at a suffering, at something wanted, that is another whole nother story, and is most likely not shown through the same dynamic. As an example, there might have been the suffering going on of advantage disadvantage giver in the 4th generation, but the client you are working with has an allergy to cats, right? So that's not related. They are not necessarily showing the symptoms. This is why it's so hidden. And you can't see it when you use your mind, your brilliant mind, you know, because it doesn't help. The dynamic will be completely different to the cause of it. And that is also what happens in epigenetics. So when just a little excursus to the epigenetics, when we're talking about the morphogenetic field, we now know that what actually is happening, that that trauma is changing epigenetics. You know what epigenetics is, everybody, eh? I can't hear you, Mariella.
Can you define it for your
okay.
own?
Well, I'm not a scientist, but I try. So epigenetic is a mechanism that turns genes on or off. And we've been told in the year 2000, I think, was declared the year of genes or something like that, that the genes are defining our life. You know, that was the state of the science around 20 years ago. And everybody was looking for the genes that are causing all this and that and that and this. And then a little bit later, they found actually, just ditch all your research and your billions in the genes. They are doing nothing. Genes need to be turned on and off, you know. And this mechanism that turns genes on and off is called epigenetics. Now, as a very simple example is, there is an epigenetic that tells your nose to stop growing at the age of 12 or what? There's a gene for grow nose. We all have that because we're growing noses. But it has to stop at one day, right? Otherwise, look how we would look. So the gene, the mechanism that turns this gene that says the nose grow off is called an epigenetic. So really, epigenetics are ruling everything that happens, and the genes are just there, you know, they are the potential. But it never, you know. So now what is interesting is that it has been proven scientifically that epigenetics are inherent, so from one family to the next generation, and that epigenetics are actually changed by trauma. And when we're talking about an entanglement, we're talking about trauma, remember, in the family system. So now there is a family member has a traumatic experience that changes his epigenetics. As a matter of example, he was a healthy guy and now he has a chronic cough. Yeah? Because of this trauma. But who knows? Nobody knows where it's coming from. Now, when he has a child, a son, he passes on this epigenetic damage that has caused the coughing in his life, but his son is not coughing. He probably has an allergy to weed, right? And then the son has a traumatic experience at birth, probably was wrapped around the umbilical cord when he was, you know, supposed to be born and almost suffocated. And now his epigenetics already in his young age changed as well through this trauma. So when he has a child, he will give the epigenetic damage from his father and his own to his child. But this child is neither coughing nor has an allergy to wheat. It is probably depressed, you know? So this is how epigenetic damage works. That's very fascinating stuff. And the connection with family constellation is so obvious, you know? Because you can see in a family constellation the father and the grandfather. You might not see the coughing, although it's very likely that a representative starts to cough in a family constellation. But you will certainly see the entanglement and clear that. No. Right, so now we were sidetracked. All right, so where were we? Okay, so let's say that was advantage, disadvantage, giver, receiver. Just remember they are part of a family system. Okay, the next are the lost children. So the lost children could be why do I have some notes here, let me just, yeah. So the lost children are, some are very obvious and they are actually talked about in the family. This is when a child dies, like, or even if it's an adult, you know, dies. Often it's also talked about when you have a stillbirth, right? But most likely it's not talked about abortions or miscarriages. They all count. And why they count, that's something I want to talk in Module 4 about, because this is something I learned from Malcolm Southwood. And the way he explained when the soul, the spirit, and the body combines into a human being. Also fascinating stuff. But for now, we just remember everybody counts that is conceived. And that is quite obvious. So although the families are talking about it, and that is actually when it is pointing at a hidden dynamic, is when nobody talks about it. But the great thing is in a family constellation, you see it. You know? What is much more subtle and a lost children, that is, but it's really an important topic, is the lost twin. Now there is scientific evidence that every 10th birth is a twin, or is pregnancy, I have to say. Every 10th pregnancy is naturally a twin. It's like in lambs, the same, I think, you know, it's naturally twins. But very often in humans, only one of the twins grows in the womb. The other one, the smaller one, is often not able to survive. And then when the child is born, nobody would ever know that there were twins to start with. But the surviving twin knows it very well. In fact, that is a great trauma to bond in the womb with your sibling and then hear it dying, literally. The heartbeat stops, you know, and you feel, you know, you feel the cold like flesh. So it's very, very traumatic for the surviving twin. And often this the dying twin is how do you say that in English? It's you know, the residues of skin and what has formed already of nails and things, yeah, they are in the body of the surviving twin. So sometimes they have a lump somewhere, like when they're adult, you know, and they think, oh, I have this lump there all the time. I want to get rid of this lump. And then they cut it out, like the surgeon is cutting it out. And then he showed it to him, and it's consisting of hair and skin and nails and things. That's the lost twin. And this is when you actually know about the lost twin, but it doesn't have to be. It can also go into the placenta and will not be seen. Sometimes a midwife sees that in the placenta, these residues. So this is part of the family system. The lost twin is part of the family system. And very traumatic experience for the surviving twin as well. Right? So always look deep. When we counting in a family system the children, we always have to look deep to find it. At former times, and because we are talking about 7 generations, remember our chart, nowadays it's not such a biggie. Special needs children are kind of well integrated in our daily life. But 2 generations before, 4, they were completely embarrassing to the family. And they were hiding them, literally. No. And these are also children. Nobody talks about, nobody knows even that they exist. Sometimes they are murdered even, or neglect, or kept in a basement, something like that, or just sent away to die. So these is also, when you see entanglements and you go back in generations, then you can find these lost children. And the children that are given away. So that's even in modern times a big problem, because families are selling their children. They are poor, you know, from poor countries, and they are selling their children to be adopted by richer Western families. So these are also the lost children that are counting towards a family system. So, oh wow, we are a little bit over our 1.5 hours. So I would say we do a break of 10 minutes and refresh yourself, stretch a little bit, and then we proceed. I will probably just, you can turn your video off, obviously, and let's gather together at 7:50. Okay? Just quickly check in with everybody. How are you doing so far? All good? Yeah?
It's making sense. Understandable.
It's everything, the video, the audio, is that all good? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Tracy, you all right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good. Yep.
Right. You're so in the dark, I can't see your facial expression, so I don't know how
Oh,
you're doing.
am I that dark? Hang on,
Yes,
I'll see if I can make that better.
that would be great. Also, Kate, you could improve your light situation, eh?
I don't look dark
Okay.
on my own video, so I can't tell. Is that better?
A little bit. So I just repeat, I talked about that just before we started. Please go tomorrow and in an electronics store and ask for a selfie light. It's very inexpensive. It looks like this. It's very small. It can be small. It can be much smaller than that. It's an LED light. And then you have, or you put it, it has it's something to screw on, and then you have something like this, like a gorilla for your phone, or you have a selfie stick or something where you can screw it on. And then this is behind your computer. So it's behind the computer and shining at your face, but it's not blinding you because it is dimmed, you know?
Mm.
So what you could do is now you could take your desktop light and turn it around into your face. Then we would all see you well. But you might like be like this because you you can't see anymore. This is why the selfie light is amazing, because it doesn't blind you. It's very inexpensive, 20 bucks maybe. And it's very well worth the purchase for any kind of online stuff. Yeah? Good. Awesome. All right. I don't know where Ale is. We just go. Yeah? I can't see you.
I don't know why. Well, I am trying to connect with my computer now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know because I am in the meeting, but okay, I will be leaving on the cell phone.
Well,
Just-
we have your iPhone on the screen, but not your video, and we can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you too, and I can see you as well. I don't know what happened.
Okay. So let's continue. So we were talking about here the lost children, and just to give you an overview, we are still in belonging, which is the first order of love, which is a part of the first order of love. And we still have to look at destiny, conscience, and guilt, right? So just that you know where you are. We're still talking about belonging. Who belongs to a family system? Yeah? That's the first thing we need to learn when we talk about family constellations. So the next one is community bound together by a common destiny. Another very clumsy translation from German, but the best I could find. What it says is what we have talked about before with the victim and perpetrator dynamic, is somebody who is not related by blood is joining the family system by a common destiny. And this is most of the time the partner. So now you might have a partner, or your parents had a former partner who is not part of the family system because he or she is not bound by destiny. But it can happen that a partner is coming into family system because the family system is not able through their own members to look at an entanglement. And out of this extreme deep love, is a certain person who is not belonging to the family is entering the family system and entangles with a family member, right? So that is by common destiny. And that could be the current partner or the former partner. That's one reason why this happens. And there are two forms of this destiny relationship. One is temporary, and the other one is through lifetimes. So the temporary is quite straightforward. Somebody is entering the family system with a strong pull to help a specific member of the family system to look at their trauma and to heal it with some modalities. And then it leaves again. And then these partnerships, they are also the partnerships that are continuing as friendships, and so no dramas really. The other ones are the destiny, the community of destiny, or destiny community for lifetimes. And I specifically say lifetimes, not lifetime, because they might as well are acting out through multiple lifetimes. So somebody who is a partner in this lifetime maybe was a father in the other lifetime, maybe was a victim or perpetrator in the other lifetime, right? Is always entangled with the family without being in the blood of the family. This happens also, same reason, this person is through love able to see the trauma that needs love and healing, but is not through his own destiny willing or able to be part of the family system. Another side note, we will talk about that in module 4 as well. Something that I learned from Malcolm Southwood is how you actually how you are reborn in your families, right? And how that works, and why it is that somebody might be entangled coming into family systems through destiny and never becomes part of the blood family. So these are this is what you can see. Obviously, this person who is becoming a family, who's belonging to the family system through destiny, has its own destiny to do so, right? So it's not a completely selfish thing. It is his own destiny to do that. And it will have to do with his own family system as well. He might pay off a debt. You know what I mean?
Debt.
Debt. Yeah. So that's possible, right? You see that in constellations when somebody says, I want to leave my partner, but I don't seem to be able to. Or somebody says, I think I should leave this partner, but I really want to stay. So there is kind of an inexplicable dissonance in what somebody wants and what's actually happening. That's very often because the destinies bound them together, and whatever was it that was the course of this communion hasn't been looked at yet, hasn't been solved, right? Often, if it's not transmitted into, or often, even if it's transmitted into other lifetimes, but often these communions of destiny, they end with the death of one partner. That's also very often, very common. So you can see it there. There's also, yeah.
Can you just give an example? I didn't understand very well this community bond together by a common death. Like kind of a example. How does it happens in a partnership?
It's mainly so we are talking about main partnerships here, relationships. Yeah, that's how it is seen.
Yeah, how this
you ask yourself, so why is somebody choosing like this particular woman as a partner or as a wife and not another? This is destiny, right? We all say that. That's the destiny. And that's truly it is. It is truly destiny. But when we're looking at family systems, then the word destiny becomes a much, much bigger term, broader term.
So let's say is when a family from a Nazi person marry a family from a Jewish person, let's say, that would be a community bound by common destiny.
So the both families are not becoming one system. It's just one person.
One person. Oh,
so one person who is normally only in one family system with blood related becomes, through partnership, also a member of another family system. But these two family systems are never becoming one system. Right? They are always two. They are not. So this partnership. Now, look at a family system who has like a murder in the 4th generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk about that, it is not something that happened and has been, you know, found out, and then the perpetrator was sentenced and he went to jail. And I'm not talking about that. That is not leaving a trace in the family system, right? It is that what hasn't been seen, that was hidden. So a murder that never was solved, that nobody talks about, that nobody maybe knows about, right? That is what brings the family soul to this length, to make it seen by finding one of the descendants through their symptoms, through their suffering, to look at it. Now, if nobody of the descendants has the guts, let's say it, or the love to actually look at it, which is always painful, you know how that is, you know, before the relief, there's pain. Then the family soul chooses somebody else who's not blood related to come in as a partner. And then this partner becomes entangled with this murderer or the victim of the murderer and becomes the suffering part of it. And then through their suffering, the family is then able to look at it. Yeah?
I think I got it now. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. So that is when we are talking about community bound together by a common destiny. The community is the communion between two persons. Yeah? It's man and wife, or could be same sex, whatever. By the way, the orders of love, when Bert Helling was looking at it, was actually completely only men, women, right? He had not this what we have nowadays, this transsexual, same sex is normal.
On that book itself, right in the end of the Orders of Love, he mentioned a little bit, but he was very blunt. He said, it's still entangled with a woman. Doesn't matter if it's trans or bi or anything, you know, all these categories that we have nowadays is more than 1,000 categories of the rainbow, but he was very blunt and straightforward.
Very straightforward. In Bert Hellinger's Order of Love, there's man, woman, man, woman, child, right? And everything, because obviously a same-sex relationship cannot have in the family system the same impact, because it won't produce a child. Right? So, and there is obviously something about it that is important. Yeah. But you have then the same-sex relationships where the partners are bound together by destiny, obviously, right? And so this is also to be looked at. But if a relationship doesn't produce a child, then it's always energetically not, you know, for the family soul so important, because there's nobody to actually carry on. You know, so that's interesting also when families actually don't continue.
Yeah, as the thing as well, he mentioned something about homosexuals that they can carry on their life through the service of humanity, you know, because it's a heavy destiny in the way to be homosexual, but in a way then this person they could be at service of life, carrying on their legacy as say.
So we are talking about
lots of people.
So we are talking about tomorrow in part 2. I think it is, yes, in the orders, in which order everybody comes. And then we are talking also about where the same-sex relationship actually has its place, you know, and how this actually works. So this is understood now. We are just thinking about, we don't think too much ahead. We just want to focus on what we're doing here. We are finding out who belongs to a family system, right? That's all we do.
I need to ask Ali to mute herself because I'm hearing her noise.
Ali, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you already well, and my microphone.
Can you please mute yourself?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so the next.
Can I just ask Maya? That
Yes.
just raised a thought for me.
Yes.
What about where there's been a surrogate? Is the surrogate mother part of a family system? I was just thinking about same-sex marriage and so on.
No, it's
No?
not. Only when it's in the family system by common destiny. But
Okay.
it's not a blood-related one. No victim perpetrator, no advantage disadvantage giver on cost of somebody else. So no, no entrance, no door to enter the family system. So interesting. That's a good point, Tracy. We all think if we are living together like far now, this is forming a family, which is true. And it's very close to our heart because this is where we, live with and commune with and relate with. This is not what Bert is talking about in the family system. And this is why we have really to focus when we do the work, that we're not going back into this, our comfort zone where we would like to see our family members. It is completely strict, that and nobody else.
Well, it makes sense in terms of the genetic.
Yes.
So it doesn't affect the genetic family, right?
Yeah.
Genetic line.
But talking about surrogates, and we're talking about adoptions, are we talking about that now or tomorrow? I'm not quite sure. I think tomorrow. That has a very strong impact, and you need to know all about it when you do the work. So it does have an impact. But when we talk about belonging, the first answer is no, they don't belong. Right? Mariella?
It wouldn't be an advantage giver, like
I can't hear you.
we wouldn't consider it an advantage giver, the surrogate mother to the child.
The advantage giver needs to have on the other side a disadvantage receiver.
Ah, okay. It's only when
Just because you go do good deeds doesn't make you belonging to family system.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. So the next one we are looking at is the forgotten or the dismissed here, right? So these are not particular children. These are family members that nobody talks about. And that is so interesting, and here's where the work as a facilitator becomes so intriguing, is that you are kind of starting to sense the persons in the room that your client is not talking about. They are the important ones, right? Not the ones he's talking about. So these are when somebody is doing some noise. Can you all mute when I'm talking, and then when we have a round, we just unmute. Just mute yourself, and then we don't have the background. I think it's still Ale. Can you mute yourself, please, Ale? You're so noisy.
Yes, I am here.
Yeah, mute, please. Mute yourself, please. You're still on.
No. Looks like it's unmute my microphone.
No, you are not muted. I can hear you clearly.
But my cell phone is saying your microphone is unmuted. Okay. I don't know.
Now you're muted. Stay like this. Just stay like this. That's all good. Okay. Right. So when we're talking about the forgotten or dismissed, these are the persons nobody talk about. Maybe the client you're working with knows about them, it's not talking about them, or maybe the whole family never talks about them and he has never heard of them. Interestingly, is often when you have this dynamic in a family constellation, that the client is all of a sudden talking about this person and has never thought of that before. So the family, so the morphogenetic field is already bringing the information in at that time, at exactly that time. It's fascinating. So they are very important in a family constellation. Obviously, they belong to the family system, although nobody talks about it. So now, in this work with family constellation, on the one side, we are thinking of family of Whanau as the people that are close to us, and they might not form the family system at all, but they are important to us, right? But for the family soul, these people are important to us that we have never heard of, that we have never seen, that we never considered. So we have to really step back and have no expectations and follow the orders of love when we do this work. Otherwise, we are maybe having a feel-good workshop, but the deep relief and healing is not taking place, right? So these are the forgotten, and then of course the dead in general. Now the dead are very important family constellations, especially if they are belonging to one of these, the forgotten, dismissed, or the community bound by a common destiny, if they are a dead lost child, if they are dead disadvantaged or advantage giver, dead victim or perpetrator, or any other dead family member. So why is that? We are talking about energies here, and the morphogenetic field is a field of vibration information which forms energy. We know that since the 1920s, since Tesla and Einstein and quantum physics and so on. Everything is energy. Energy is beyond time and space, and it's never not there. So it's always there. It can only transform. And that's the same in the family system. Now, nobody is really dead, right? And that is one most important thing when you do the work for yourself, self-realization, or later to help others, to completely not just understand it mentally, but go through the process of dying and really feel how that is. And I would like to make an exercise with you. Maybe we do it just now. I don't know whether we can actually go through the whole material today. We can continue tomorrow. But I think it's a good point. We make an exercise now. So sit straight. Close your eyes. If you can, put the feet on the ground. And then take this wonderful 3 deep yogic breaths. And close your eyes. Deep inhaling and exhaling, releasing the shoulders from any weight. The neck is relaxed, jaw. The feet, the knees. The spine is upright, effortlessly holding the weight of the upper body. And then you're depicting yourself as lying on the ground. It could be the dirt outside or the grass. It could be a carpet. It could be indoors, a wooden floor. Whatever is the first picture that comes to you, take that. And then you see yourself lying down there like in Shavasana, if you know that from yoga, the corpse pose. The arms and the legs are slightly rolled outwards, palms up. The eyes are closed. And then you go through your body and follow my guidance. So you're looking inwardly at your right leg. And then you're feeling and you're asking yourself, am I still there when this right leg is gone? That's all you ask yourself, am I still there? And then you feel about your left leg. Ask yourself, am I still there when also the left leg is gone? And you have no fear. It's just a natural question to ask. And then you look at the right arm and see the right arm is going. And you ask yourself the question, am I still there? Same with the left arm. And then you see your lower part of the upper body, your organs are gone, disintegrating somehow. Magic, fairy dust. You ask yourself, am I still there? And then the same happens with the head, the top of the head. You ask yourself, am I still there? And then the whole upper part of the body, through fairy dust, is disintegrating into the earth. And you ask yourself, am I still there? And then whatever remains, the jaw, the mouth, maybe the shoulders. With the next breath, you're picturing they are also gone. And then you ask yourself, am I still there? And stay with this I am feeling for a couple of breaths. And feel the lightness without the weight of the body and the possibilities you have without the weight of the body. No pain is possible. No boundaries. You can do whatever you want, whatever you can think of. And just realize that you can still think without the brain, without the head. That you are aware, you can still see. Just spend a couple of more breaths in this state. Of being bodiless. And aware. And then slowly, very slowly, you're coming back into your body. The body is reassembling itself. Everything is where it was before. You can stretch out your legs, your arms. Take a deep breath. Slowly open your eyes. And now I want you to unmute yourself. And then we have checking in. How you have experienced this exercise. Anybody wants to say something?
It's very good. Remind me a course that I did a weekend of dying. The name of the course was dying. Yes, preparing yourself to die until a ceremony that was made very similar than that meditation of really dying.
How did you experience that?
Very good, at the same time frightening.
Mm-hmm.
Very attached to my body. I realized that.
Who else was afraid?
Huh?
Just be honest. Who else were in fear? Nobody.
Yeah, it
Oh,
was a
good.
fear, especially of not coming back, like, like,
Okay.
but very good, very liberating at the same time.
Mariella, you want to say something?
Hear me?
Or not?
Hearing me. For me, it feels, I have done, similar experiences, and it's always, it's a feeling of expanding into consciousness, like the question, am I still there? Yes, my consciousness is still there. The body is gone. I have died, but I still remain somehow.
Yeah.
That is very empowering. I don't have fear. I enjoy it.
Mm. Very good. Very good. So while we're talking about the dead here, through our own experience, we can say there is no such thing as dying, right? The energy is just transforming into consciousness, but there's even remembering possible. This is why the dead in the family constellation are very well alive, right? They are there. But I want to point out here, when we are talking about the dead in the family constellation, we are not talking about spirits. Spirits are a completely different story. Spirits are egos that are hanging around, not knowing where to go, right? We are talking about that in module 4 in great depth, how to deal with spirits. When we're talking about the dead in family constellation, we are talking about a family member who belongs to the family system, who has still a traumatic experience, not being looked after, not being solved, and is taken by the family soul to actually solve this problem through the love of a descendant, right? Okay, good. So we managed to go through this big chunk of the orders of love belonging. And if you have a further question, write it down. We talk about that tomorrow, right? So you can think about it, sleep on it, and see if the question answers itself. So now we talk about another big chunk in the orders of love, which is conscience, destiny, and guilt. We have talked about destiny already, so we don't dwell on that too much. But what we have not looked at is now the conscience, which Bert Hellinger calls the Gewissen. That's translated as conscience. It is a big part of his philosophy and practically has practical impact in the work as a family constellation facilitator. So he is dividing, he is deciphering between the personal conscience, the collective conscience, the conscience of the spirit mind. So let's look at them all separately. What is the personal conscience? If you think about it, every action is guided by conscience. That is what you actually guide to do something, because you go there where it feels right. Right? But how do you know what feels right? It is conditioned. And we know, if you look at the biology behind the conscience or the consciousness, that there are states that you are in, alpha, theta, tetra, delta, beta, and so on, where the brain waves are in a certain way reflecting or communicating with consciousness. And the child that is born from this last third trimester to the year 7, his life, is in a so-called theta state. And that means it is in a state where it only absorbs what's going on around them without any deciphering between good or bad. It just absorbs everything that's going around. And that's what we call conditioning. So everything that this child absorbs within the last trimester and the 7th birthday becomes the personal conscience of this child. So everything that the child has experienced from family, whānau, teachers, whoever the child is with, caretakers, peer group, everything, older siblings, that becomes the personal conscience. Everything that is done within this group, within this time that the child is conditioned to, is perceived as right, even if it's really bad. It could be abuse, right? It could be physical, mentally, emotional abuse. It could be a religious distortion of concepts of life, right? But for the child, it will create a personal conscience that when it is older, that it is kind of in these actions, either by doing or by observing or being part of it, it feels right. And often never questions it if it's actually right, you know? So that is the personal conscience. But Hellinger has observed in family constellations that the representatives are often drawn to do something that feels right, but is not the right thing. And that comes from the personal conscience. So the personal conscience only works in the system where it comes from. It does not work outside because there's another conscience created. So if one wants to leave the family system, not leaving like forever, but wants to expand outside of the family system, it has to leave with a bad conscience. That's what happens. It does not feel right. It's not easy. And we all know that, right? We have all experienced that. If we are off to new things, it is scary. Not because the thing is scary, it feels scary. Because a personal conscience is telling us it is not right. Because we don't do that, our family doesn't do that. You know, we are bakers for 7 generations, we are not becoming builders. As a very blunt example. And then you want to be a builder, you don't feel well, right? But you might be driven to do it. So this conscience only works in the system, and it is actually not a good advisor, right? Because it's only reflecting the conditioning of the system. We can also call it kind of an animal nature behavior, because we're not thinking about it. We're not, you know, having morality about it. It just feels right because we've been told it's right. And it is always connected with the emotion of guilt and atonement. So when we are leaving this realm of the personal conscience, we feel guilty. And when we are staying, we feel atoned. Does that make sense? Although it's maybe really bad stuff happening there. So therefore, guilt and innocence are not equal with good or bad in one's actions. And that is really important, you know, to understand. And this is one of the things where Bert Hellinger is really challenging our mind. I'll give you an example. We've been told that we are bad children if we don't look after our elderly parents. Is that so? But that's not true. Because as we will see tomorrow, that's not the right order. But if we don't do that, we will feel a bad conscience, right? We will feel guilty even, won't we? But it's not the right thing to do often. So we will talk about that. So that is a personal conscience. So we are talking about this, personal conscience. That's where it plays off. And it's pure conditioned, how can I say, conditioned subconscious stuff that forms it. Then we have the, then something else, so personal conscience. So this personal conscience is something that you feel, right? It is not something that you can write about or that you can really look at and be objective about it. It is something you feel. It's a feel-good thing. So you need to be very suspicious if you do all the time things that feel good. You might never leave your personal conscience, might never leave the boundaries of your family system, right? If you only do the feel-good things. But it has a function, obviously. It secures the spot of the family members in the system. So the personal conscience might actually have a good function within the system, you know, But if you want to leave the system, meaning expanding your own, you know, realm, then it doesn't feel good and it doesn't serve you anymore. So you don't need to rely on it. You can only rely on it if you want to belong to the system and do what is right in the system. So this is, when you think about the family system of 7 generations, that can be really old stuff that's been, you know, handed down through all the generations and never been questioned. Right? There's a really funny story, and I'm kind of reluctant to say that being a plant eater, but it has to do with bacon. But somebody's like was, you know, cutting when they do bacon and eggs for the family, always the ends of the bacon. And then the daughter of this mother asked, "Mom, why are you always cutting the ends of the bacon and throw it in the bin?" And the mother said, "Well, because it's better for the bacon, it's better for you. The ends wouldn't be, you know, digestible or good for you. I have learned that from my mother, and she has learned that from the grandmother." And the child was not happy with this relation. It was a very clever, bright child. So the child actually asked the grandmother, who was still around, "Grandmother, why is mom always cutting the bacon off, the ends of the bacon?" And then the grandmother says, "Oh, I don't know why your mom is doing that, but I did it because my pan wasn't big enough to lay the bacon flat." That was the reason. So that's how we learn things, right? And that's a really good example for how this personal conscience forms within a family system. It has no reason and objective, you know, good reason often. But we make it up, right? Because we think it must have be a reason. So when you are leaving the boundaries of the system, of the family system to expand, you will feel bad about it, and that's a good thing. Yeah, and because we only can help others when we are developing ourselves, we need to do that quite often, feeling bad about what we are doing, because it would be the right thing to do. And as a takeaway message, guided by, like, actions guided by feelings are normally not the right thing. So we need to find actually the guidance that is neither feeling nor mind. It's somewhere in between. And that is what Bert Hellinger has titled Going with the Spirit Mind, or the New Family Constellation. We might talk about that here. Hang on, back there. We might talk about that here. The difference of the family constellation that is in this book from 1994 and what he called the new family constellation, which is which came to pass in the mid 2000s, let's say that. So he was starting with family constellation in the way that it's just it's written in this book, The Orders of Love, or Love's Hidden Symmetries, by placing the whole family system, as we have discussed now, who belongs to it, in a room with representatives, and then ask everybody how they feel. And because the morphogenetic field gives every representative the information about the person they are representing, they could accurately say, I feel good, I feel bad, I don't want to look there, I want to look there. You all know that. You all have been part of the family system. That's what happens naturally to the representatives. And then he would go and guide the persons to a place where they feel better, and from there seeing how the imbalance or the obscuration of the orders of love is being fixed, so to speak. And then the orders of love are intact again, and then love can flow, and the relief is there for the customer or the client, right? So that's the way family constellation was developed by Bert Hellinger. But then he found out, that was after 20 years of this work, 15 to 20 years, he found out that actually the representatives, they move by themselves. He doesn't need to guide them. And that was new then. And then he called that moving with the souls, because he thought that the soul, the individual soul, or the family soul, whoever is in charge at that moment, is moving the bodies in the right way towards the healing, which was a big step, because the facilitator actually leans back and let the representatives move, right? And this sounds like everybody can do that, but that's obviously then there is a point when you have to, intervene. But then he found out that he was actually not right. It was not the soul that was moving the representative. It was the spirit mind. There was an intelligence, because the soul are the emotions, the feelings of the soul of the group, of the person or the family, but that was not actually the moving part. Because now that we know everything about the conscience, we know we cannot trust our feelings. So you cannot trust your soul neither, because the soul is the combined emotions and feelings you have, right? So there is a higher force that wants the healing, that wants to go outside of the comfort zone of the family system and wants to actually heal that what the family has not been healed through all the generations, because it was stuck in their conscience, right? And that is not guided by the soul itself. This is guided by a higher force, and that is the spirit mind, or the spirit, if you want to call it like that. So then his later work he has titled Going with the Spirit Mind, or the New Family Constellation. So for him, this was a breakthrough, which it really was. And this is why he gave them the word, the New Family Constellation. And I learned the New Family Constellation from him, so I wasn't learning the old one anyhow, but it's in the books everywhere. And some people who are trained 15 years ago or later than that, they are still, doing the old family constellation work, which is fine, but it has not the strong impact. And now I have the feeling that we are now together creating another movement, which has to do with the virtual reality we are finding ourselves in all of a sudden, and I would like to call it the next family constellation. Feels like the next generation of family constellation to me. So I'm very happy that you're all on board with that. And we actually covered the part belonging, conscience and destiny. And what is missing now is guilt. So we look at guilt to round up our part one. No, we are not done with the conscience. I want to talk about the conscience in partnerships, and then the conscience in collectives. So let's go back. The conscience and partners. So we have talked about the personal conscience, and now we talk about the collective conscience and the conscience in partners, in relationships. So just as a kind of piece of information, a relationship between families always fulfilling three basic needs. That's why we have relationships: the need for bond, the need for order, and the need for balancing or compensating, whatever term you wish. So I repeat: the need for bond, the need for order, and the need for balancing or compensation is why we are entering into relationships. That's the basic need all of us have. It's human. But these needs cannot be all fulfilled at the same time, and sometimes they're also fighting against each other. And this is because we are following different aspects of our personal conscience in relationships. And because we are conditioned to certain behavior, feeling as right and good, and other family systems are conditioned to another behavior that feels right and good. Now, when you go in a relationship with that, then you can clash, right? That's what happens. And then you feel like a need for bond, but it is felt as bad, for example. Or you feel the need for order and you do something in a specific order, but it doesn't feel right because the other family system you are relating with has another conscience, you know? So we are all in the same need of these relationships, but we all feel differently about it because of our conditioning or conscience we have. And this is why partnerships are really hard. Often, right? So that's natural because it's just the way we are conditioned. So if you, for example, are in need of compensation, then you feel giving as guilt and receiving as innocence, right? Because that's just the way you are a person in your personal conscience. And if you're in need of order, you feel fear of punishment as guilt and loyalty as innocence, right? So let's just think in, we don't want to go in greater detail here because we can talk about that forever. But again, this is just telling you that if you're looking at the personal conscience, it always looks different from which angle you look at it. So don't be deceived by it when it comes your way in a situation with yourself or a client. So the next conscience we have to talk about is the collective conscience. So this exists in addition to the personal conscience, and its function is to enforce the orders of love in a family system. So the personal conscience is keeping a secret, for example, right? The family secret. Nobody wants to talk about this murder in the 4th generation. But there's a collective conscience, and that wants to make it seen, because that's the only way it can heal itself, can heal the family soul. So the collective consciousness is different to the personal. It's not conditioned. It's also not just kind of within one family system. It can go over that, the boundaries of a family system. And it integrates everybody else. So it integrates the forgotten, it integrates the perpetrator, it integrates the dismissed children, it integrates everybody in this conscience. In this conscience, it only feels good if everybody is part of it, right? And in the personal consciousness, it feels not good if everybody's part of it because we are ashamed or feeling guilt or some other feelings towards it. So entanglements that you see in a family constellations are sometimes feeling good and sometimes feeling not good. That really depends on the conscience and how you look at it. And it does not matter how it feels. So if you ask a person in a family constellation, how do you feel? And he said, good. That doesn't mean that that's the right place. Like, this is not so automatic because it might be just the place where the personal conscience feels good because that's where I'm used to be, you know, not necessarily where I go when the collective conscience comes in and guides us. So this is what we have to support and not being kind of Ali, can you mute yourself, please?
Sorry, I don't know what's wrong. Yeah.
Just put the mic off and leave your picture on.
Yes. Yes, I am.
But
I am
turn your mic
unmuted.
off. No, you're not muted. I can hear you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, talking about a family constellation, when a representative is feeling a sensation of being twisted and torn all the time and cannot focus and kind of feeling being controlled remotely or something like that, or like living two lives, that is when the personal conscience and the collective conscience is fighting each other, basically, right? And that's a good start, because if that wouldn't happen, you know, this person, this representative, or who he's representing, is always stuck in the personal conscience. So that's a really good thing if that comes up. That's a step towards, you know, development, going out of the restrictions of this conscience. But we're still talking about the same family system, right? So that's not outside of the family system. That is that. And then, oh boy, oh, do we want to talk? We do not have much time. Yeah, then, so obviously the collective conscience has also boundaries, because it only wants to include them who are actually part of solving the problem, the suffering, who are part of letting the orders of love coming back into the right place, into the right order. But then we have the conscience of the spirit mind. That is ruling above all personal and collective conscience, and it unites them both and their boundaries. That is also where this conscience is not felt as good or bad. In this conscience, there's only one feeling, and that is the feeling of doing the right thing. And it is quite overwhelming when you think about it. How can I do the right thing if I'm not following my conscience, you know, my personal conscience or my collective conscience? But that is the work of dissolving as a person in this work, you know. Because when you dissolve your person, your ego, your personality, then you have access to the conscience of the spirit mind. And then you know what's the right thing to do. Even the personal consciousness says, no, no, we don't do that. And the collective consciousness is not part of it, you know. But you know what's the right thing to do it. And that's the work of self-realization, self-development, personal growth, and then being also able to help others, is to come into this zone where you are guided by the spirit mind, right? And that's what we want to achieve. So we don't want to be the best facilitator and the best person in the world, or the most intelligent one, or whatever. We want to be nobody in a family constellation. Yeah? I hope that's not too disappointing. Okay. This doing the right thing, although feelings coming up saying that's not the right thing, you feel as peace, tranquility, be in the right place. You can feel it as a representative, you can feel it as a client, you can feel it as a facilitator. It is a very quiet spot, it is very undramatic, and it's, if you talk in family constellation terms, you're not rushing towards it, so there's not a movement, a fast movement. It's normally no movement at all, very slow at best. That is when you're actually guided by the spirit mind. And that's what the new family constellation is all about. Obviously, in this collective, or in this spirit conscience of the spirit mind, the person, the collective conscience is dissolving, right? So there, it's not kind of, it's actually not existing. But Hellinger said in one of the books, and I have a quote here from translated, obviously, in my own words, that is the way and the destiny of the new family constellation. Right, so last but not least, we were talking about guilt. Yeah, let's talk about guilt. So guilt is a feeling. Guilt is not objective. Are you saying something, Mariella? I can't hear you.
I noticed that we're still looking at the belonging. Do you have the others so we can quickly look at them?
Oh, I did. Is it, what is the screen sharing is not coming through?
No,
I did move it. Here's belonging. Can you see it? And now there's another one. No?
No.
It's not? Oh, what am I doing? I stopped sharing and then I redo it. Let's see. That's really bizarre. Thank you for that. Okay. Now, share again. What is it saying now? Is that's the right one?
Yes.
So that was, hang on, that was belonging. And that's the next one. Yeah? Are we good? Okay, cool. So that was for some reason just got hung up, my screen sharing here. Okay, so that's great. Thank you for pointing that out, eh? So we're talking about a guilt at this stage. So we are talking about here, guilt. We talked about the conscience, personal, collective, and spirit-mind conscience. We talked about destiny, especially with partnerships. And now we're talking quickly about guilt. Guilt is actually quite a very strong hinderer, or a strong hinderer of solutions, of healing, of finding the entanglement and solving the problem. Just what is really important is that guilt is not objective and is actually not existing. Guilt is a concept. Just a concept. There is no such thing as guilt. As same thing as there is no such thing as dead. There is no guilt, right? There's just cause and effect by nature, yeah. And if you look at animals, if you look at dogs, if you look at, they don't feel guilt. Even if the dog looks at you with big eyes, this is not guilt. It's just submission. They're submissive. They don't feel guilt. I'm absolutely certain about it. I talk to my dogs all the time. They don't feel very good about what they do because they do what dogs do. So guilt is not actually, so for the fact that guilt is not even existing, it has a very strong impact of our daily life. And this is why we have to look at it. But we have already learned that guilt is completely depending on the conscience, right? So it's created by the conscience. So in a personal conscience, guilt is created there where you're not following your conditioning. You feel guilty. And in the collective conscience, you feel guilty when you are not following the collective and what they want, right? Then you feel guilty. So to understand and to learn, that's good to know. My battery is getting low, but we are almost finished anyhow, so that's good. So this is where, when you see in a family constellation guilt is coming up, you know it's going to sidetrack you. Definitely. Because it leads you back to personal conscience, most likely, right? So wherever it's guilt, there is nothing to dwell on. It is something to be dissolved, right? So it's the drama that we are not interested in, is what guilt actually gives us. And we also talk about guilt in the 4th module when we talk about energies and spirit and traumatic experiences in early childhood traumas. Because there's well, you know, guilt is created in the first 7 years, sometimes in the womb already, womb, I mean, from the mother. So that's where it's created. So we have to get over it. And if you feel guilty, and that's your homework for tomorrow, I would like you to contemplate and feel in where you feel guilty. You know, where there is this feeling of guilt. What kind of situation, what kind of action, you know, you think of, which is the first thing that comes to your mind is normally what we take. Where you would say, oh, I feel guilty about that. And be honest about that. You don't need to share it if you don't want to, but you can tomorrow, but be honest about it. And we will, if we want to look at it as an exercise tomorrow, then we can definitely, most certainly dissolve it. Yeah. Okay. So we are coming to the end. It's almost 9 o'clock. I had actually planned to do a little bit on the board with the figurine, but I was thinking we have a full program with all the information, so we might not go in there. So what would you like to do the last 2 minutes of today? Any wish? Now is the time. Just unmute yourself all, and then we have a checking in.
I'm just remembering that you asked us to do the meditation before each session. Is that correct? The one that you gave us as a gift?
It's always great to do. But obviously there's no punishment if you don't do it.
So you would recommend doing it every day anyway, or what would you recommend for that?
I would recommend to do it as often as you want to do it. Okay. Don't push yourself to do it. That's not the point. Yeah. If it comes to your mind, and you might once is might enough, and probably you enjoy it so much you do it every time. Yep. Okay. It's completely up to you. All right. So great. So are you tired? A little bit? Not at all? Are you energized? Yes?
It's a lot to take.
Yes. It's a lot to take in. So if you have time tomorrow, look in your notebook, you know, write some more sentence. Maybe you just, you know, made some scribbles or something. Write something more comprehensive that comes to you before you forget about it, because tomorrow we are going in the part 2, the second, or can you see that? Oh, far out. Why is this? I don't understand that. Why is the screen sharing all of a sudden not want to work? So you saw this conscience, destiny, and guilt, and now I'm swiping over, and you don't see that. Far out.
But I can see your mouse running around, but the screen is the same. Yeah.
I have to work on that. Anyhow, it's just the next part 2, the second order of love. Who comes first? And I think we have time tomorrow for more exercises and probably also to constellate something. Okay, cool, awesome. So great to see you. Would be even better if I can see everybody of you clearly tomorrow. So if you would like to source a good selfie light, that would be great.
So where do you buy them from? Who sells
Well,
them?
I have ordered them online, but obviously that takes a bit time to deliver. But you're in Auckland, so I'm absolutely sure you can go in any kind of electronic shop, any kind of shop that sells photo equipment or electronics or cameras or anything like that would have that. And maybe even warehouse situations. I don't know. I think so. I would. Okay.
So I won't be here tomorrow, but you'll send me the recording on Sunday morning so I can catch up.
Yes, I will. So, good thing to say. So 2 more things, housekeeping, I want to say. So, first of all, I am recording all our sessions, but that is only for these situations when one of you cannot partake in one day, right? Like Tracy cannot come tomorrow in. So I would send her the recording. It's very private. Obviously, you're not supposed to share that in any way, shape, or form. So you know you're not under pressure. If you can't make it for a good reason, then you can't make it. Then you get this recording, but it's not meant to be public in any way. But however, I might decide later on that I make a feature about the training where some tidbits out of the training content will be part of, but it will not be like, obviously, it will not be the whole recording, just short. That's one thing. And so if you need that, let me know. So I know, Trace, you're going to get it tomorrow morning. And the second is if you need an invoice for the training fee, let me know. I know, Tracy, you want one. Yeah. Mariella, you might want an invoice too, or not, for your tax. Whatever, let me know if you need that. And Alexandra, you are sorting out your Wi-Fi for tomorrow.
Yes, I am going to do it.
Yeah?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
yes.
Sounds good. So I'm looking forward to see you fresh, refreshed.
Yeah.
Tomorrow in this room, Zoom.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.